coming back to the 3 o'clock session this afternoon. Ladies and gentlemen, please make some noise for broadcaster, all-round good guy, Jonny I'Anson!
Yeah. Hi, guys. Nice to see you all. Thanks for having me here. Following Jeremy Bowen is quite something, by the way. I don't have any stories about Yasser Arafat, but I did interview Donny Osmond, who I can agree is a very, very lovely man with incredibly nice teeth. That's about all I have in concert with Jeremy Bowen.
Who knew that would be the theme of the afternoon is Donny Osmond?
Donny Osmonds.
Who knew? Who knew?
Target audience as well for the Osmonds.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Yeah.
Hands up who actually knows who Donny Osmond is.
Come on,
actually,
really?
Come on, really?
It's like that's a quarter of people, which is very impressive. Can anybody sing his best known hit at all? Love Me for a Reason? Yes.
Very good. 10 points to
Look at
Gryffindor.
you.
Well done. Perfect. Could only go downhill from here, I think, really. Okay. So, look, thanks so much for joining us. It's lovely to chat to you. We're going to chat about sort of like freelancing during this conversation, because I know there's going to be a number of people that, maybe go down that route at some point in the career, or even at the beginning of their career as well. But how did you, first of all, get into broadcast yourself? Because it wasn't a normal route, was it?
No, I mean, it's a very long and circuitous story, but I'll summarise it as quickly as I can. My background is in sport and exercise, and I went to university and studied that, and then got a job for the council as a sports development officer, and it should have been everything I loved, but it just wasn't. I really didn't like it. And I'd always enjoyed just talking to people and being around people and maybe entertaining a bit as well. And I, by chance, ended up at a Radio 1 gig where I met people like Chris Moyles and Colin Murray. I thought, wow, look at this. This is amazing. Like, their job is just like dicking around and playing music, and this looks so much fun. And so I managed to blag some work experience at an old station called Galaxy Radio, which is now Capital Radio. And this was still when I was working for the council. I got a weekend job there, pressing buttons on adverts. I sacked everything off and moved to Australia and got drunk and surfed for a year. And then I came back and thought, I really want to make a go of this. And I blagged 2 weeks worth of work experience at the BBC. I don't know if they still do it. You could kind of just apply almost like an open call for people that wanted to find out about radio. And I got a day or two there, and I managed to make it last 2 weeks. And then I just did everything I possibly could there. Like all the jobs that nobody else wanted to do, Vox Pops at 6 o'clock at night on Briggate when it was pissing it down, and saying yes to staying behind and working Sunday mornings just to make tea for people, all that kind of stuff, just to make myself as visible as I possibly could do. And then a couple of paid shifts came up, and I did them, which were effectively, I mean, it was kind of a broadcast assistant role, which again was just saying hello to guests and welcoming people in and making tea for them. And more shifts came, and it just kind of snowballed until a 3-month contract came up, and I went for that and got it, and then another 3 months. The BBC were quite fond at giving you short-term contracts just to... I guess it was a non-committal way of saying, let's see if each other works out. And then a staff job came up, and I went for it and managed to get it, and that was then kind of probably 14 years in total in the BBC before going freelance a few years ago. That's a short version of it, but yeah, I didn't come from a broadcast background. I had to sort of blag my way in through the back door route, really.
And so what was it about radio that was the attraction for you? You mentioned Colin Murray, you mentioned Moyles. What was it about radio for you that you thought, do you know what, that's the medium that I fancy?
I think it's the thing that I still love the most, which is the intimacy of it, and also how quick it is in terms of reacting to what's going on around. And I'm sure we'll talk loads more about this, but things like obviously podcasts and social media platforms like YouTube and all that kind of stuff, they're brilliant, but they don't have that immediacy in terms of broadcasting, apart from when you're doing lives, but they don't have that immediacy that just radio did. And I think more than anything else was just the companionship. When radio's right, it feels like you are in the room with them, and it is you and the presenter or the presenters, and you are part of that conversation. And I loved that. I loved just listening to other people and feeling like they were including me in that. Anybody can kind of have a conversation, but it can feel quite exclusive. But I think the idea of having someone talk to you rather than at you and providing that intimacy and that companionship, it just grabbed me. And hearing as well, just people mess around, have fun, or likewise, the opposite end of the scale, hear someone like Jeremy Bowen interviewing Saddam Hussein. You know, it opens up worlds to you that otherwise you wouldn't get to. And it's that weird dichotomy of it's the everyday, but it's also the most extraordinary.
Yeah.
And those two things I just thought that seems an amazing way to make a living. I've got to try and make that happen, and sort of managed to. Maybe just managed to. Still holding on by the skin of my teeth.
So take us through, your initial sort of like radio shows and the jobs that you were doing while at when you first went to the BBC.
So I was reporting first. Well, a combination of production, so getting shows ready, booking guests, finding things to talk about, all that kind of stuff. Local radio, as I'm sure you're aware, has changed quite dramatically in recent years. But you would have a breakfast show, a mid-morning show, an afternoon show, and a drive time show, and then evening shows. And they all would need producers. So you would be the people booking guests, finding topics to talk about, all that kind of stuff, going out and doing vox pops. And I very quickly knew that I wanted to be on the radio. So I kept pestering the assistant editor at the time just to let me have a go if I possibly could. And that happened when someone, like it's a cliche, but like somebody was ill or somebody booked last minute holiday. It was on the show that people didn't really care that much about. It was a low risk early breakfast show that started at 4:00 in the morning. And I just said, I'll do it. I'll be the guy that does it. Let me do it. Like I was terrified at the prospect that he might say yes, but he said yes. And then the realization that I had to do it, and I didn't sleep for like a week and a half beforehand, and went in and did it, and nothing disastrous happened. So he gave me another go when the presenter was off again, and then eventually I became the standing guy for early breakfast, and then I became the travel guy, so reading the travel news, and then I think I just sort of started to establish myself. That was probably a year or so of doing that, and I kind of guess I built a reputation of being reliable at least, and who wouldn't defame anybody on air or swear. They were the two main things they didn't want you to do. And as long as you could keep making a noise on air and not be too boring and not be too offensive, they were happy for me to do it. And then when an opportunity came up with the mid-morning show, I feel like I maybe proved myself enough, and I was lucky enough to get it. And then I just sort of worked my way through the schedule a bit then, up to the point of there was something called the All England show, which was the whole local radio network, which I started doing, which they asked me to do after the presenter left. And in the meantime, I sent a few demos off to 5 Live, and we'd had some conversations, and eventually they brought me over again to do the overnight show as cover, and that started developing until the point of where I decided I wanted to do more 5 Live, and decided to leave the BBC, my substantive post, go freelance and focus on 5 Live.
Was that always the target, do you think?
No, not at all. No, I mean, like when it came to presenting, I think a lot of people, if I asked you to put your hands up now, if you want to be a presenter, I'm going to say like half the room, if not 3/4, if they're honest, maybe want to do it. So who wants to be a presenter, can I ask? Yeah, okay. So, yeah.
Quite a few.
So quite a few. The thing is that a lot of people want to do that. And I thought it looks the most fun out of all of the jobs, really. Because, you get to meet the most interesting people, and you get to spend time properly talking to them. And I think as well, and this definitely isn't the reason to do it, but you become a little bit beguiled by, this is a bit show busy, isn't it? You get to be on the radio and have your names in the Radio Times. You realise that's nonsense, but actually the best bit is you get to be the person that speaks to these amazing, fantastic guests. And once you get a little taste of that, it's really addictive. Because the best bit about the job that I do is that you get to meet the most amazing people, whether they are celebs or whether it was a guy that I met last week who was nearly eaten by a hippo in Tanzania. And you don't get to meet people like that normally. And I got to spend like half an hour talking to him about what it was like to be attacked by a hippo and nearly drowning. It was amazing. Has anybody here ever interviewed anybody that's been attacked by a hippo? It's really cool if you ever get the chance.
Anybody been attacked by a hippo?
Yeah, come on the show, because I'm all about that.
Both none.
Like that sort of stuff. Or, you know, meeting astronauts, speaking to people that have, I don't know, broken multiple world records, or likewise, just amazing people that have lived through the most unbelievable times who you would never come across in any other walk of life.
Yeah.
I think that for me has always been the most appealing part, is getting to meet and speak to people who you never would get access to otherwise. And you don't have to be a presenter to do that, by the way, not at all. Just being in the industry, you get to meet the most amazing people. And it's a real blessing to do that. And I think that is a thing that I've never, ever gotten bored of, is meeting and talking to interesting, unusual and exciting people, because I'm none of those things.
No, you definitely are. You definitely are. And you said something to me before we started, actually, and I've said it certainly about sort of like the last 20 years of my life, because it's not a real job.
No.
It doesn't feel like a real
It's
job.
nonsense.
And that's quite key, isn't it, really?
Yeah, it's not a real job. Like, how can it be a real job where you go into work and someone's going to say, you're going to have 3 hours of sitting in a studio. We don't know who's going to be on it. We don't know what's going to happen. But we know whatever it'll be, it's going to be fascinating. So it might be the case that you turn up to work and, amazing, it's Jeremy Bowen, or it's John Simpson, or it's Kate Adie, or somebody like that. Or we're going to cross live to Ukraine, and I'm going to talk to somebody in the basement of a house who's being bombed by Russians. Or I'm going to meet someone that was attacked by a hippo. I'm going to speak to David Hasselhoff today, or Kylie Minogue, or likewise, I'm just going to meet a mother that's overcome the most unbelievable hardships and has managed to survive a brain tumor and give birth to triplets. Like, you know, that's not a real job, getting to do that. How can it possibly be? I spent 24 hours sat in a bed in the National Media Museum once, seeing if we could break a record to broadcast the longest from a double bed. Like, that was my job. And we did it. And you're like, well, that's a successful day at work.
So you're actually in the Guinness Book of World
Well, it was never properly verified, Darren, which to this day I've never really recovered from. But
disappointing.
Yeah, or you know, we're going to go to Cos and make a documentary about the refugee crisis. Or like a couple of years ago, I spent like 2 months around bare knuckle boxers and this guy from Bradford as he prepared for a championship fight in this secret location in Birmingham. Like, it's amazing. That's not a real job to do any of that stuff. And when I sort of say it out loud, it sounds like a fever dream, but it's true. And like what I do, there's a tiny proportion of some of the exciting stuff real people do, like Jeremy Bowen.
Yeah.
But just even those little bits, they're amazing.
Yeah.
And you know, that cliche of, you know, if it doesn't feel like work, then it probably isn't true. Like, it is work. It's a legitimate job, just doing ridiculous things. And I can see, you know, that's why everybody here should get really excited about it. Because, I know that having been at university, even though you passionately start with something, you can maybe by the end of it feel a little bit worn out with it. But don't be, because this is just like the start. This is just a little taster of what you can get, because it's amazing. It's an amazing industry to work in, no matter what you do. It's so fascinating.
And you were telling me earlier on that it was good to be back here because you literally built this place.
Yeah, so when I finished at university a long time ago, in 2002, that wasn't that long ago.
It was a bit of a, ooh.
I couldn't get a job after university, and I generally laboured on building sites and things like that. So I went back to labouring, and one of the jobs was building I think it was refurbing some of the old flats. So you might sleep in some of the flats that I refurbished. And I wasn't even like the builder, I was the labourer, so I was just digging holes and mixing concrete for the brickies. But to think now that I'm back here talking about my silly life, interviewing Jonny Osmond, it's a wonderful thing. It's lovely how it's come full circle.
Full circle, definitely.
I'm still handy at mixing concrete, by the way, because I had to do that the other week.
You mentioned a little bit earlier there, and something that we get students to do quite often, and sometimes they maybe don't want to sort of do the vox pops.
Yeah.
Okay. Explain why vox pops are so important.
Well, firstly, because from a radio point of view, they just provide a little bit of colour and texture and dynamicism, and they let you listen to what normal people think. But secondly, it's like any job. You have to start somewhere, and like doing what we do is all about communication. No matter what you do, whether it's TV, radio, podcasting, online, even newspapers that some of you may still want to work in, because they're still so important. It's all about communication. And if you can't do the basics of going up to somebody in the street and starting a conversation with them, you're going to really struggle. You know, there is no substitute for getting out and just talking to people, even if it's about the most inane topics or if it's about what's happening in Gaza and Ukraine or Yemen. There is no substitute for getting out there and trying to start a conversation with people, because ultimately that's what we do, is we start a conversation with somebody in the studio, but hopefully then we'll prompt one at home with someone listening to the radio or watching telly or watching you on YouTube or whatever it is. Like if you can't go and do a fundamental piece of broadcasting, which is interacting with people, and just record it at the same time, then you're probably going to struggle with some of the more complex and scary aspects of it. And also, nobody wants to do it in a newsroom. And if you say, I'll do it, they will love you. They will want to kiss you on the lips for it, because anyone that's been in a newsroom, they get to the end of the shift and they're like, oh, Christ, I haven't done a Vox Pop. And if you're like, yeah, I'll do it, I love Vox Pops, they will love you forever for doing it. Seriously, sort of how I got a job. Honestly, it was a massive reason, because I would just say, yeah, and go. I went around the newsroom saying, does anybody want a Vox Pop? And people couldn't believe, like, they lost their minds at the prospect of somebody wanting to do a Vox Pop.
Well, I know, and I'm not going to name any names, but I know there's been certain journalists that have told me I don't like doing Vox Pops because I don't like the general public.
Yeah, they can be problematic. But also, they can give you the best bits as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Like in the same way that listeners are the funniest people and the most intelligent people involved in a radio program, not the people in a studio.
Yeah.
You know, without doubt, they are. And the same as people out there on the street. 90% of the time, you'll get either something you expected or maybe something unusual. But you'll also get absolute gold out there as well. And it'll be bits with people that you had no intention of talking to, or likewise, you wouldn't come across yourself in real life anyway. But that's the best bit about it.
Yeah, exactly. We're going to have a listen to...
Oh, really?
We're going to have a listen to some of your work. I don't know if there's any Vox Pops in this, but Mark...
No, I don't do Vox Pops anymore, no. No, just kidding.
Okay, so here we go.
Look at that, Adobe Audition.
Jonny in action.
It's 19 minutes to 11 now, and we've been hearing throughout the morning from aid agencies who are trying to reach their teams in Gaza this grave concern about the fate of civilians after communications networks went down following last night's bombardment. Alison Griffin joins us, Save the Children's Head of Conflict and Humanitarian Campaigns. Alison, thank you for being with us. What are you hearing from Gaza at the moment?
It's pure horror for all children and their parents right now.
Just a reminder, Donald Trump is safe and well after what the FBI says appears to be an attempted assassination on the former president at his Mar-a-Lago golf course in Florida. Let's now speak to Sarah Jones, who joins us from Politicus USA. What's your reaction and actually the broader reaction in the States to what we've learned over the past few hours?
It's very troubling. This is the second time this has happened in the last 2 months.
We've just had another update from Israel's military saying that Iran's missile attack on the country is continuing. Let's cross live now to Beirut, the capital of Lebanon, and speak to our former Middle East correspondent, Jim Muir. Jim, what's the latest from Beirut? What have you been hearing?
Everybody is watching it very closely, wondering whether it will impact on Lebanon itself. Last time
Do you think that you or the government should apologise then for cutting flood defences by 8% back in 2011, considering the people that are waking up to absolute devastation?
Well, our decision this Parliament was to increase the spending on flood defences, so what we have done...
It was cut in 2011 though.
Well, what we have done is increased it in real terms.
But why
and for the first time...
When we knew this happens every single year, 8% was taken off the flood defence budget.
Well, what I would say is that we have increased it since then. We have laid out a 6-year programme increasing flood defence spending in real terms.
So it was a mistake to cut it back in 2011.
Well, what we're doing now is we're increasing it.
Tell that Liz Truss would be a terrible Prime
Do you
Minister.
realise now in hindsight that an 8% cut
I
in
think-
real terms to flood defence
I think
budget in
what's
2011 was the wrong
what's
thing to do?
happened historically is flood defence spending under all governments has gone up and down, and we think that wasn't the right approach.
Alfie Boe was the winner of West London karaoke competition with a scorching rendition of Suspicious Minds.
Gets better.
Is this true? Is it true? Yeah. In which case you'll know the words, won't you? You do the big bit, I'll do the high bits. Okay, ready? It's gonna be amazing. Come on, Alfie.
We can go on together with suspicious
Gets better.
minds.
Yeah.
Oh, suspicious minds.
The needle's going right to the vein now. As I watch now, the needle's slowly depressed. And the heroin is flowing into Chris's veins right now, right in front of me.
It takes between 5 to 7 seconds, and it is, I always call it like putting on a warm blanket.
Standing on a beach just north of Cos Town, we were called by Hibbert from the Human Relief Foundation. Just after dawn, the visibility increased, and on the
This
horizon
was
she'd seen
for...
something.
No, I think this was Radio Elite. Yeah, it was good. I got nominated for an Amnesty International award.
It's a strange thing to come back to this lovely hotel, to know what goes on here on a daily basis. People arriving on little boats and dinghies trying to find a better life, risking their lives in doing so. And it's after what I saw today that you realise how lucky you are to have the choice to be here. Most of the people that I've met are running away from something. They just want to live a life that any family should have a right to live.
Yeah.
So, thanks, guys. Yeah, so when you said, like, is it a real job? From shouting at Liz Truss to duetting incredibly well with Alfie Boe, I think shows it's not a real job. But it is actually a job, you know, and that variety as well. Like, I love that about it. I love that variety, and I think that's one of the other things is that it's again a cliche. Like, no 2 days are ever the same at all, as that displays. You know, it's weird and wonderful, and really important as well. You know, when you have somebody like Liz Truss, who was then the Environment Secretary in the wake of some hideous floods. You know, you are charged with the responsibility to ask them why they haven't done better. And that's your job. Because even though we can all go and see our local MPs, it's very rare that you can get somebody in front of you to say, why haven't you done your job better? And you get to do that so much. And it's a real responsibility and a privilege to be able to do that, because very few opportunities exist for normal people outside of the industry to get to do that. So it's one that you should all take really seriously as well, because it's a really important part of what we do.
Yeah, no, there's just a fantastic variety of different audio skills up there. It was incredible to listen to. So going into freelancing, was it an easy decision for you? Because obviously, you know, people talk about, you know, I hate to quote Partridge, but the BBC gravy train. you sort of think about people, you know, at the BBC, that's it, you're there for life. That must have been quite a tough decision.
Yeah, that could have been me. Do you know what? So that was going to be me. That I was going to be there forever, because I'd done, I think, 13 years at that point. Pension's amazing, benefits are amazing. Life in general is just great. And rightly so as well, that people, when you tell them you work for the BBC, people instantly are like, oh, really? That's really interesting. That must be great. Tell me more about it. I've been in India or in random places like Bali and Japan, where people barely even speak English, and you'll mention the BBC, and instantly they know what you're talking about. It is amazing, the power of the BBC. But also, I just got really comfortable. I got far too comfortable, and I got a little bit annoyed, I think, with any place that you stay and you become a bit institutionalized. The little things start to pick at you. like emails about dirty dishes in the communal kitchen and all that sort of stuff. And I just was getting really angry. And and I'd been doing stuff at 5 Live quite frequently, but not as much as I wanted. And that was the thing I loved to do the most. And and bearing in mind, I had a 6-month-old baby at that point as well. Wow. And it was still COVID. So it was like, there was loads of dicey elements of making that decision. But I just thought, if I don't go now, I probably never will and become part of the furniture. And part of the furniture in local radio, and there's nothing wrong with that, but that wasn't what I saw for myself or what I wanted from it. So yeah, I took the opportunity to go, and it was the best and scariest professional decision like I've ever made. The freedom and the liberation of being able to choose where you want to go to work, how you want to work, what you want to do, and when you want to do it it's amazing. It really is amazing. And I can't imagine now going back to an organisation where I'm like, okay, this is my place forever, working these set hours. I just can't imagine doing that now. So it was the best thing I did, and it's been equally terrifying as well at the same time.
And I suppose also, I mean, we're often, it's nice to be nice and, to treat people in a certain way, and especially when you're coming out of the BBC, because you want the BBC still to be, contacting you for jobs at 5 Live and anything else.
I just want to be loved, Darren, I'll be honest with you. And if that's by the BBC, then so be it. Yeah, I mean, the thing is, though, like this industry, and understandably so, because there are some really rotten people that work in this industry, like really black-hearted people. But I don't think it's exclusive to broadcasting. But they, they get to exert influence, and they get to be a dick. And actually, rather than getting called out, it's encouraged because it's part of their shtick. It's part of their personality. It's what makes them unique. But I don't buy that. I don't think you have to be awful in any way. You can, if you don't get on with someone, or if you really want to do something and you might have to, I'm not going to say climb over people, but get there ahead of other people, you can still be respectful, you can be forceful, but you must always be respectful. You must always be kind to people, because there's no reason not to be. Like, we're not in the 70s anymore. That's just not the case. And I think being respectful and being kind and just being a decent person, it doesn't mean that you have to come second. There are still ways of being really assertive without getting walked all over. And I think leaving the organisation as well taught me the importance of that you have to, once you're a freelancer, you can't, and it took me a while to understand this, that you can't apologise for yourself, and you can't allow yourself to have that imposter syndrome to the point of where it starts to cripple you in a way. And because I've suffered terribly from nerves and from not feeling good enough and all that kind of stuff, and I still do, but I try and get a grip of it and realise that if you let that overwhelm you, you won't get anywhere in the freelance world, because there are a million other people that are trying to do that job who will say they're better than you. And sometimes a lot of people are influenced by people who just say, I'm better than that person. It's amazing how much power that has. You don't need to name people, but you can say, I'm great at what I do, and I'm really valued where I am now, and I really believe in myself, and actually here's some proof as well. You can do that, and people won't think you're a dick. That's fine.
I think the other thing about freelancing as well, which is, myself, I was self-employed for 20 years, and I couldn't say no to anything.
Yeah.
And I think, still now my wife is not happy with me because I will say yes to, if someone comes and says, do you have time to do this?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because I'm still in that sort of mindset. And I suppose, because if you say no, you may...
They'll never call again.
They'll never call again.
They will, though. But but they might not.
But they might not.
But generally they will.
Yeah.
But I'm really lucky. My wife's amazing, and she's so supportive. And I would say that probably most people in this room aren't married. Maybe some are. Is anybody married in this room? Okay. Yeah. So not that many. So if you've got... I'm not going to get into your personal relationships. You've got a very nice face. I bet you've got a lovely other half. I bet they are very, very accommodating for what you want to do. And I think that's really important. But generally, if you haven't got that other person or that family, then take opportunities, even if it means traveling. You know, go out and do it, even if it means getting home really late or missing out on that night out or that weekend away, because it does stand you in good stead. Like, saying yes makes a massive difference. It sounds an obvious thing to say, but saying yes, not being awkward, not saying, can I do this shift instead, it does make a real difference. Because what I learned as well is when I started doing more and more stuff at Network, Radio 4, Radio 5, all that kind of stuff, World Service, it was amazing how much they valued just the ease of booking someone, rather than you'd think, oh, they've got these systems in place and they'll have an A, B, and C list and all that sort of stuff. If they need someone and you're there and they know or think you're good enough, that's it. They'll just book you because they've got so much other stuff to worry about. So exploit that system. Just say yes as much as you possibly can.
See, I've got to tell my wife that again tonight. I'm going to open up to questions very shortly. But if you had one piece of advice to give our students about a career in broadcasting or career freelancing in broadcasting, what would it be?
I mean, the thing I always say to people is you're meant to be scared. I know that's not necessarily helpful advice, and I can give you a couple of specific ones. But this is meant to be scary. Like, what we do is not terrifying, not to the point of where it puts you off of it, but you are meant to put yourself out there and be uncomfortable. You're meant to find things nervy, and you're meant to think, oh, this is really pushing me. But without that, you just stay in exactly the same place, doing exactly the same thing, and we don't get any better. You know, the whole point of us being here, I think, on Earth is just to see what we can do and how far we can push ourselves. Because otherwise we wouldn't have gone to space. I'm not saying what we do is the same as going to space, because we're just dicking about and singing duets with Alfie Boe or whatever. But what I mean is that if you get that nervousness and you start to doubt whether you think you can do it or not, then that's absolutely what you should be doing. You should be, like, when I first started doing 5 Live, I would, honestly, Darren, I would be awake for days and days beforehand, and to the point of where I would hope I would get told by my manager I can't do it, or maybe I would get a bit sick and I wouldn't be able to do it, because I'd done my bit by saying, yeah, I'll do it, but actually following through terrified me. But now I still get the nerves, but I managed to use it as something positive, that this means it's exactly what I should be doing. So you're meant to be scared is the thing that I can say to you first and foremost. In terms of sort of actionable stuff to get in with the freelancing world, is use your contacts if you have any, anywhere, and you're in such a brilliant feedback. You're in such a brilliant position to already have links established through the university and through your work experience and placements and through this, that use your contacts if you've made any contacts anywhere. Just tap them up and ask them if they've got anything going, anything you can help out with. Get in front of people is one of the most powerful things you can do. Not WhatsApp them, not just email them. If it has to be a Teams call, fine. But ideally, get in front of them just to talk to them. Because again, that whole thing of what we do is about communication. If they don't feel like you can even have a one-on-one conversation, then why would they employ you with the intention that you have one day of hosting your own TV show? It's just not going to happen. So get in front of them. And then the other thing is, just make stuff. Like, think about what you want to do, and like if you want to be a sports broadcaster, or if you want to be on the radio or on TV, you've got amazing facilities here. And also, we're at a time where it's never been easier to just make content, create content, and get it out there. When I was a kid, and I didn't really know I wanted to do radio, but we used to mess about on my mum and dad's cassette player, like recording ourselves talking, and then trying to record the top 40, making really bad radio programs. I didn't know I wanted to be in radio, but, you know, they were doing that, I was doing that in 1987. Now you can broadcast to the world from your bedroom. Like, you can spend £100 on getting a bit of kit, and you can make really good stuff and take that to people. You know, if you want to be a sports reporter, go down to Guiseley FC or your Sunday League Club and do a little report from there and get in front of someone and say, this is what I've done. If you want to be on the radio, make a podcast about a topic you're really passionate about and find the editor of the station you want to work out and go and just sit and ask them for a cup of tea. Look, you'll be amazed at how many do it. Just sit in front of you. You might not get a job at the end of it, but if you can just sit and have a cup of tea with someone, when something comes up a month later, a bit of work experience or a job on a Saturday, you're in their heads because you've gone above and beyond what everybody else has done. Yeah. Seriously, so get in front of people, make stuff, make content, and use your contacts if you have them.
Great advice, great advice. Right, okay, let's, we've got a lovely, okay, just right there for Adonis, there we go.
Oh, thanks. So firstly, thanks for saying I've got a lovely face.
I mean, every word of it.
I need as much love as clearly as you do. And also, I have the same socks as you, but in blue.
Do you?
Yeah.
I got married in these socks.
Good job you
not
didn't...
just the socks, I was wearing other stuff as well.
That's why they call them business socks. So my question is about, obviously, freelancing and, like, what direction are you going in? Are you like a mercenary for hire, going to different outlets, or are you doing your own thing? And how do you deal with burnout? Do you feel like you have to work a lot harder because you're competing sort of on your own rather than being in the safety of an outlet?
So in terms of what I mean, I love making documentaries and I love being on the radio. They're the two things I love the most, and I'm really lucky that I get to do both, and way more so since going freelance. So I'd made a few documentaries when I was a staffer, and then in 3 years now I've made, I finished my 11th one last week, or the week before, sorry, and it was great. Like, it's amazing to think that that's what I wanted to do. So I took a risk so I could just do that. And then the presenting as well is, I'd love to, I'm a freelancer in the truest sense that I'll just cover people when they're on holiday and on leave or they're sick, I'll do that. It would be great to have one day a show where maybe I knew exactly what I was doing each day. But I, as I said before, would probably get a bit too bored with that. So I would still keep making documentaries, getting to go interesting places and meet interesting people. So, yeah, I mean, I'm very lucky that I'm sort of doing the stuff I love doing. It's really good for me to do this as well, because we all get caught up in our own thoughts about, I'm not doing enough, I'm not enjoying what I do because I should be up here, because this is what other people do. But like saying it out loud is really affirming stuff that I'm getting to do what I love doing, and I'm making a living out of it. I mean, that's incredible to be able to do that. So really just more of what I'm doing. I used to do quite a bit of TV when I was at the BBC, and I haven't really done very much of that, so I would like to do more of that if I could. But again, I've been a little bit scared, so I'm not taking my own advice here. I haven't put myself out there to do it. So after today, I will make myself scared, and I'll try and chase up some TV stuff. And then the other thing, burnout. Yeah, that's a funny one, because you find yourself working all the time as freelance, even though you might not be working, if you see what I mean. So you might just be sat at the computer thinking, I'm just going to magic up some work. That's really hard and stressful to do. And you're constantly checking emails. I was away last week on holiday, and I was constantly on the phone and constantly trying to hustle for work. So that is a downside. Trying to find work is, for me, the hardest bit of this, because you have to just sort of magic it up, which is where getting in touch with your contacts, getting in front of people, making stuff. I was really lucky that I got a documentary commission that we'll make next year at Radio 4, which I pitched and they weren't interested in, and I was really pissed off that they didn't want to do it. And so I've been swearing a lot, not a lot, but everyone's an adult, innit? And I don't get to swear with a microphone very often, so I'm just making the most. I was really disappointed that they'd said no, but I really believed in it, so I just made it. Not the whole thing, I just made like a 6-minute example of what it would be like, and I sent it back to the commissioners, and then they got back and said they'd like to do it. So, stuff like that, where you work for potentially, it could be free, but it also could really work out for you, is really important. So yeah, it's hard. I think at the same time, don't be afraid just to take some time, because my aforementioned very supportive wife was also like, you have to take time away because you didn't work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week beforehand. Why would you do it now? So you have to make yourself stop and take a bit of time and know that, yes, you've said, or you've maybe said no to work, or you're maybe not working in that moment, but there will be other stuff as well. It's only if you keep saying no, eventually people go elsewhere. But everyone knows you need to take some time for yourself as well. Does that help? Sorry, I felt I was rambling then. That's great. Okay, that's great.
Excellent. Okay. Ron, right next door. There you go. You haven't had to move very far. This is good.
Yes, very convenient. Hi, thanks. I'm Raj. So I was going to ask actually about like the work, especially with the freelance, like the work-home life balance, like if that improved. But you kind of covered that. So what I was going to ask about then is your personal branding as a freelancer.
Yeah.
Like how important would you say, and how much work do you do on your personal brand?
Yeah, I don't do enough, and it's really important. This is why stuff like this is really good for me as well, because I don't do enough about that. I think are you into you do social media marketing and? That's where I've come from. Oh, is it right? Okay, yeah. So my social media is bang average, really average. It should be way better, and I fall into that trap of, well, if I'm doing this and I'm working, then I don't need to worry too much about that. But then eventually, if that project finishes and I think, oh, I haven't got anything now, I should have been working on the branding and hustling for other work. It's really important is the answer, but mine isn't an example to go by. I'm the opposite of what you should be doing. I think also, though, your personal branding is what you do on air and how you deliver your project or how you perform when you're actually at work and employment. You know, that's a really big part of your branding. But in terms of actually, you know, a social media presence and a website. I've only just got a website and I've been freelancing for like 3 years now. So I should have immediately got that up. You know, my social media is a mess of just pictures of the back of my child's head and me sat in a studio. Like, it doesn't make any kind of gelling sense there. So I need to sort that out. This is very helpful. Feel free to give me some tips on how to do it. So the answer is, it's really helpful, but mine's rubbish.
Hi, Jonny.
Hi.
Do you think that there are less opportunities in radio now with network stations such as Capital and Greatest Hits Radio replacing local stations?
Yeah, it's really difficult because it's not just about commercial stations. Local radio, BBC local radio, where I came from, is still a proving ground for people that want to get into radio. It's the route that I took, as you heard me blathering on about. But stations are becoming smaller because they're starting to network shows and things like that. So I think it's more difficult, but there are still loads of opportunities. When I go back there are frequently new faces who have come through the university here and elsewhere. I think it's more competitive, so you have to try and make yourself stand out more, such as the aforementioned things of creating content yourself or taking examples yourself of what you want to do. Because I can guarantee, if you go to insert name of radio station here with a piece that you've made yourself, compared to, say, 10 other people, you would be one of maybe you and one other person that might have done that, but probably not. So create something yourself that gives them a reason to look at you more than someone else, is what I'd say. But also, there are way more production companies than there ever were because of outsourcing now and because of the explosion of podcasting. So you might need to change your mindset a little bit and think, as much as I want to work for a radio station, I'm going to start off at a production company that makes podcasts, but also there are loads of production companies that now make stuff, or that have always made stuff for the BBC and other network radio stations. So I think there is still loads of opportunities, but it might not be directly with that station. It might be with a production company. And there are so many, they're so easy just to find names of production companies and get in touch with them to say, is there any chance I could come and do a bit of shadowing with you? Or any chance that I could come and just have a cup of tea and a chat to you and show you some of the stuff I've done. I can't advocate enough for doing something yourself to make yourself stand out, because it is really competitive out there now. It is tough.
Good question. Okay, elsewhere, any more? One just up the back there.
Hi, Jonny. I just have a question. Do you have any regrets so far in your career? If so, how would you change it?
Yeah, I do, actually. So my big regret probably wasn't going freelance sooner or leaving where I was sooner. I had a manager that, I wouldn't say we didn't get on, but she didn't think that I should be presenting as much as I wanted to.
Right.
And rather than accept that, but believe myself and then go somewhere else and do it, I made a point of staying there to prove that I should be doing it. And I did prove it in the end after an extra probably 3, maybe 4 years. And then I I got this evening network show. It was great, but I wasn't happy. Like, oh, I've found my perfect place now. I'd realised that I'd done most of that to try and prove a point, which is such a waste of time. Wherever you go, you will have people that don't recognise your value. As long as you recognise it, that's the most important thing. Because if you believe it, you will be able to sell it to somebody else, just maybe not that person. So I think staying where I was for far too long, rather than accepting someone who was probably more knowledgeable than I was, and certainly more influential, just accepting their decision and saying, okay, I'll go and do what I want to do somewhere else. I'll find someone else that does value me. Yeah, that was probably my biggest regret, I would say, was staying too long in one place when I didn't need to.
That's a good question. We've got time for one more, I think.
Ooh.
And it's right over in that corner there.
Oh, gosh.
He's going to have to down and all the way up again. Going to get your steps in today.
Hi, Jonny.
Hi.
I was just wondering, what would the best things to have on a CV if you were going to go into freelancing?
Oh, the best thing. What, in terms of organisations or work experience?
Anything.
Just
really.
anything.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really hard because until you get someone that really willing to take a chance on you, then I guess you don't have anything. I mean, this makes a massive difference. So you're already ahead of everybody else to have this on your CV, being at Trinity, because it's so well regarded in the industry. The thing that really helped me, and there's not as many around at the moment, is RSLs, restricted service licenses. Places like Chapel FM in Leeds is an amazing place. I don't know if any of you know about Chapel FM in Leeds. If you want to be on the radio or make radio, go there, because you can just do that and actually be on the radio. And it's broadcast just to a small area in East Leeds. That's where I started. That's what I forgot to mention at the start, actually. That's what I did before getting into the BBC. So I did Chapel FM, places like BCB, which I know you have a link with here. Again, just provide a step ahead than what other people might have. Hospital radio, I know it's really cheesy and there's not a huge amount left, but again, that's what I was doing, hospital radio. I was going down to Radio Skiba, it was called then, at Holbeck Hospital, and playing vinyl records, ask your parents about those, to a ward full of people with broken hips. It was amazing. It was like I was just getting to play records and talking to a microphone. Like, that's so fun to do that. So all those things that make it look like you really care and you want to do it with putting the work in makes a huge difference, because there are so many people who want to do it or who try and do it just because they want to. And that isn't always good enough. You have to prove it by doing it. And like I say, create things yourself and take it with you. So any volunteering you can do, any of that kind of stuff. Any big organisations like the BBC will always carry the weight no matter what people think of it. So if you can get in there and get some work experience, that would make a massive difference. And just using any contacts and those opportunities to just get a bit of experience anywhere would make a huge difference to you. You just have to do it. Don't be comfortable. Be scared. Like I said, time and time again, you have to be scared.
Brilliant stuff. Ladies and gentlemen, Jonny I'Anson.
Thanks, guys. Thank you.
Thanks so much to Jonny. Our final session